What's up guys, Nintendo Enthusiast here. Today I have another comparison video for you, and this one actually might take some more explaining if you don't understand the title. Okay, so recently Star Wars Republic Commando got an HD remaster slash kind of port to PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch, which is the version you're seeing right now on the left side. Strangely enough, Republic Commando didn't get an HD remaster on Xbox, which is pretty odd. However, it does kind of make sense, as the original Xbox game is already backwards compatible on Xbox One and Series consoles. And more importantly, back when the Xbox One X launched, Xbox went in and enhanced a bunch of classic games to run in 4K resolution on the One X and now the Series X. So what you're seeing on the right side is actually the original game that launched on the Xbox, all the way back in 2005. So yes, if you actually have the original Xbox disc of Republic Commando, you can put it in your Xbox and it will play it. And if you have a One X or Series X, it'll actually play it in 4K, which is the version you're seeing right now. But anyway, to put it a little more simple, this is the remaster that just launched on Nintendo Switch versus the original Xbox game from 2005 with an enhanced resolution, and I believe they added widescreen support as well, which I'll get into later. But anyway, now that I'm done explaining what these two versions are, let's jump into it. And right off the bat, I have some bad news about the Switch version of Republic Commando. It just doesn't run that good, which is really surprising considering the game is from 2005. You'd think it could run with no issues on Nintendo Switch, but unfortunately it suffers from a lot of frame rate drops, and I'll be sure to show some footage of that in full screen so you can really see it, because I realized recently it's hard to see the frame rate difference of both versions if you're watching them side by side. But yeah, it just doesn't run that well on Switch, and I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed about that, and it definitely doesn't run at 60 frames per second. I would guess sub 30 most of the time because it just constantly chugs, which a lot of longtime fans of this classic Star Wars game are going to be really saddened by this, and unfortunately the bad news does not end there. One thing that's really bizarre about this version of the game is that it uses the same exact button prompts as the original Xbox version. So in both versions you'll see the same buttons come up because, well, the Xbox and the Switch have the same exact buttons. A, B, X, Y, R, L, obviously the triggers are named different, but for the most part, they're the same. Unfortunately, this port does not remap the buttons, and the Switch and the Xbox buttons are in different spots. So whenever I played the game on Xbox, you would use the A button to command your troops, and then the Y button to jump, which is a bit weird, but we see that sometimes in games. And then of course X to reload, and then B to melee, which is common in a lot of games. But then jumping over to Switch, yes, you'll still use the A button to command your troops, but now the A button is in a different spot. It's where the melee attack was, which is now completely swapped with the command button. So you're meleeing with the B button, which feels really awkward, but not as awkward as the X and Y button, which are switched on Xbox and Switch as well. So on Switch, you're actually reloading with the X button, which is where the Y button is on Xbox. Basically, command is where melee should be, and reloading is where jump should be, and it just feels really awkward. And in the options in the game, there's no way to change the controls. I'm sure you can go into the Switch console settings and change it, but it's just really unfortunate and odd that they did this. Like seriously, no other first-person shooters on Switch will use the B button to melee, or the X button to reload. That's just so weird. And lastly, my final negative with the Switch version, aside from the performance and weird controls, is that the load times are a lot longer than the Xbox version. Now, I played the Xbox version first, so I didn't even really notice the load times because they were so instant. And I'll be sure to show a few comparisons on the video right now. As you can see, the Xbox version is pretty much instantly, whereas on Switch you'll be waiting around 5 to 10 seconds, which isn't that bad. There aren't a ton of load screens in the game, but it did pull me out of the experience a little bit after playing the Xbox version, where I didn't even notice them. Now, as I mentioned before, I think they brought widescreen support to Republic Commando on Xbox back whenever the One X came out and it got its 4K HD makeover. I'm not 100% sure about that, but the reason I think that might be is because, if you'll notice, in the Xbox version, the field of view is way more zoomed out, which essentially means on Xbox, if you're looking straight ahead in an environment, you'll see more of the environment on the sides, whereas on Switch, it's a bit more zoomed in. And once again, I probably wouldn't have noticed this if I didn't play the Xbox version first, but when I jumped into Switch, something just felt a little odd. I felt like it was more zoomed up than it should have been, but FOV preference is different for everyone. I personally like the way it looks on Xbox a bit more, but the FOV isn't a deal breaker on Switch. It's just something I noticed. Okay, so are there any positives about Republic Commando on Switch? Well, there are a few. In a few areas I did notice that the textures looked a bit better than the Xbox version. I'm not sure how much time and development costs went into enhancing these textures, as most of the game looks really similar to the original, just with an HD makeover, essentially what the Xbox One X version got that you're seeing on Series X right now. But aside from some textures that I thought looked a bit better on Switch, the lighting I actually prefer overall as well. As in dark areas, it'll actually be, well, dark. Over on Xbox, you could be in a closed-in area where there's no light source, but you could still see perfectly fine. On Switch, it was actually really dark, and you actually had to utilize the game's night vision mode, which I'll show right now. But yeah, aside from some textures that I thought looked better and the lighting on Switch, I think the original Xbox version running on Series X or One X is the way to go if you're going to buy this game. And I'm sure the PS5 version of the game, which I can't test today, is something more similar to this Xbox One X version running on Series X. It's probably the best of both worlds, where you're getting the better lighting and better textures with great performance. And I'm sure you can find that comparison around the web, but I figured not a lot of outlets would be covering the original Xbox version running on Xbox One X or Series X versus the Nintendo Switch. And that's pretty much it, guys, so be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments section below. If you enjoy this graphics comparison, hit that thumbs up. If you don't, hit that thumbs down. And of course, if you like graphics comparison videos or reviews and previews and reactions and sometimes skits, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. It would really mean a lot. I will talk to you guys later. See ya.